Okay, so yeah, so welcome everybody, and I think slowly we are going to start because we have a very packed morning, and I would like just to thank you everybody for being here, and I hope you enjoy yesterday evening, and I would like just to give you a very quick logistical note, because today after this morning we have quite we have to run to move to the other place. So I would like just we are all on the same page. At the end, we need to take the bus at 1, the same tram we took yesterday, the 15. Then we will have to take the train and then another bus. We have less than 10 minutes to do all changes. So again, try to be all together. Once we will arrive there, we will have our consortium meeting. And at the end of the afternoon, at 4, we have the guided tour of this exhibition at Château de Prangeon. So again, just to give you a little bit of an overview, but now we are ready to start our this morning session. And I'm very, very happy to welcome our 2 speakers, because I would like to say we wanted to have this session that focus a little bit more on Switzerland, because as you well know, we had a very important part that focus on case studies, and Switzerland was one of them for both Work Package 2, Work Package 5, and Yvonne and Bettina have been the first that really took part to our interviews. So for me, it was very, very important to bring them today, because they make a huge contribution to our work. So I think it's and thank you for accepting to join us. So I will give you a very short introduction to Yvonne, Riano, and Bettina Hirsig, and then I will give the floor to Yvonne. Allora, Yvonne is Associate Professor at the Geography Institute of the University of Neuchâtel, and she has been recently appointed as a Vice President of the Federal Commission on Migration. She also has been part of a very important national project funded by the Swiss National Scientific Foundation. This is the Migration Nexus, Mobility Nexus project, and she was leading the transnational activities module. And I would like also to stress that she's really has a huge and important specialization on geographies of inequality, and she always brings in a feminist perspective that we started yesterday to also focus on the stress on the relevance also to the perspective, but again, with Yvonne with her work, always this as a priority. So thank you again. And Bettina Hirsig, I think I'm really, really pleased to introduce you, because she's the Managing Director of Power Coder. So it's a very important, she studied economics at the University of Neuchâtel. She also had some other specific working experience in other companies, but at a certain point, she will tell us a little bit more later, she co-founded in 2019 Power Coders. And this is a very interesting initiative that focuses on training and the professional integration of refugees and migrants within the IT sector. And I was talking before with Bettina, it's very interesting because our partners in Italy is also working together with the Power Coders that is based in Italy, but everything started from Switzerland. So I think it's very nice to have her with us. So I think we are very privileged to have these 2 speakers with us today. So I give immediately the focus to Yvonne. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Elisa, for your kind words and for your invitation, Sandra and Elisa. I'm very sorry I couldn't go with you last night for the fondue. I've been a bit sick. So in order to be here fit today, I decided to speak here. So today I'm speaking, or the title of my presentation rather, is I'm an economist, but I work as a chief. How can brain waste be avoided in Switzerland? And let me start with a few introductory words. As you know, there is a global race for talent going on to attract and retain skilled personnel. And Switzerland is one of these countries with a knowledge economy and skilled labor. What is interesting is that Switzerland has a lot of potential. The majority of migrants living in Switzerland is skilled, 62%. At the university degree, a huge potential. So today, I like to make two arguments. I think that we've been talking so far about shortages of skilled labor, but I also want to address the question of to what extent the migrants who live in Switzerland can use their skills in jobs and professions that match their country. I think it's an equally important question. Otherwise, the skills will be wasted, and we will be talking about brain waste, which, as you know, is when the skills of migrants are underutilized or not utilized at all. And the second argument is that several of the skills required by the Swiss labor market are actually already available in Switzerland, are present among the migrants who live in Switzerland. But they're unfortunately not always sufficiently used, valued, especially among family migrants and refugees. And this is a huge topic. So the two questions I want to address is to what extent can we observe the phenomenon of brain waste in Switzerland among people with higher education? Here I take an intersectional perspective. I will be looking at migrants and non-migrants and women and men, just to see how the different groups do. And that leads me to the second question is to what extent are Swiss integration policies directed towards preventing brain waste and strengthening the professional skills of migrants? This is important because it's the policy level. So what I'm doing is analyzing Swiss integration policies to see to what extent all this we've been talking about yesterday and today is actually part of the process. So what methodology did I use for my research? A mixed method approach. The first one is a statistical analysis, descriptive statistical analysis of two sets of Swiss statistics. The first one is Swiss labor force survey with a representative sample of 50,000 participants. And the second is the Swiss earning structure survey with 1.7 million participants. So this is wonderful statistics in Switzerland, is the basis for the analysis, which I combined with interviews with Swiss officials responsible for migrant integration, particularly at the canton level, because you know Switzerland is a federal system and the level of the canton is really, really very important for implementation, as well as with NGOs representatives who implement projects for highly skilled migrants. And last but not least, policy analysis of Swiss integration policies, the so-called Integrationsagenda IAS, integration agenda, which was adopted in 2019 by the federal government and is implemented by the cantons, as well as integration projects from NGOs and universities. Right. So let me start by taking a closer look at skills shortages and skills waste in Switzerland. This graph here is very interesting. It shows us the evolution of the skills shortage in Switzerland from 2015 to 2024. I have a pointer, I should use it. From 2015 to 2024. And you see that the green line shows the skills shortage index. And what we see here is that despite significant easing, the skills shortage remains severe and is still worse than before the pandemic. Remember the pandemic was around here. So it's very high, which is, of course, a huge problem for Switzerland, and therefore has been the Swiss Federal Council long-term goal to make better use of the skills available in the country. And it turns out that a report written by the Swiss Federal Council shows that there is a lot of potential among Swiss women, but also among migrant women who come as part of family reunification. So this is known, and this is one of the targets by the Swiss Federal Council. The second point is aging population. And this graph here shows the population pyramid by age and sex in Switzerland, how it has evolved from 1900 to 2022. And you can see that from 1950 onwards, the numbers of young people started to decrease in relation to the numbers of old people. And by 2022, the numbers of old people are much larger than the young people. A typical European phenomenon, Switzerland's population is aging. And as you know, this is mainly, the main reason is declining birth rates, but also a long expectancy rate. People live too long. This is a huge challenge for the Swiss labor market, but also for the pension system. And therefore, I think the question of to what extent the skills that are already available in the country are being properly used is very, very pertinent. So let me look at that question. And these are the results of my statistical analysis. I raised the question, can tertiary educated workers use their skills? And in this table, I have here on the left, men and women, and born in Switzerland and born outside Switzerland, divided by the countries, other European countries, and countries outside Europe. How to measure brain waste? This is a tricky question, but I use two indicators. Very simple ones, employment rate, which is the percentage of people in working age employed, and unemployment rate, which is people who have no employment. And I assume these are indications of brain waste because if you are working, you're using your skills, and if you're not working, you're not using your skills. So you see the results, and it's very interesting to see that the highest employment rate and the lowest unemployment rate is Swiss men. So they have, let's see, the best situation in terms of being able to use their professional skills. Whereas we see a huge gender gap here among all migrant women who already among European Union migrant women have lower percentages of employment and higher percentages, lower percentage of employment and higher percentages of unemployment than Swiss men and than migrant men. And it keeps going, getting worse. European countries even lower, and the lowest women from countries outside Europe have the lowest employment rate and the highest unemployment rate. So clearly there is a gender issue here. There is a huge gender gap. Brain waste mostly affects migrant women, particularly women from non-EU countries, because they experience the lowest employment and the highest unemployment rate. So, of course, male migrants also face many difficulties getting into the labor market. But besides the problems that men face, migrant women face additional problems. And it's not a surprise that the gender-specific challenge, one of the main one is the responsibility of reconciling paid work and family care, a difficulty that also Swiss women experience. And don't get tired of saying this again and again and again, because it's a huge impediment. Migrant women arrive to Switzerland when they're in the age where the biological tick, the clock is started to tick. They have children, and then the whole issue of reconciling family and paid work falls on the shoulders of women, and that's why it's so challenging. And the second point is that many skilled migrant women enter as family migrants. And family migrants is a point or is a way of entering a country which is usually not considered as having economic potential. So they can kind of get forgotten and seen as belonging to the private realm, to the family realm, and that potential is there. So that's the first result. The second result, what I measure here is what I call adequacy of paid work. And by adequacy of paid work, I understand the extent to which the job you have matches your qualifications. Are you using your educational qualifications or not? And in this graph, I have I compare Swiss citizens with foreign citizens, women and men. And I have 4 different types of tasks that people with tertiary education practice: simple tasks, practical tasks, complex practical tasks, and complex problem solving and decision making. And this is actually the only type of task that corresponds to a tertiary education. All of this, if you are exercising any of this, you're working under your qualifications. And this one, which is in my title, simple task, an economist working as a cleaning lady. So let's see look at the results. We see here that when it comes to the gender gap, the same thing we see again. It's the Japanese migrant women who have work adequate to the skills, much less than men. And the same thing among Swiss women compared to Swiss men. So we have a gender problem in Switzerland here. Now, overqualification affects to a certain extent all these highly skilled workers in Switzerland, but migrant and non-migrant women are the most affected. So brain waste has a clear gender dimension. What are the consequences of brain waste? Why is this important at all? So in economic terms, clearly, the failure to use your professional skills leads to the loss. If you're a doctor and you don't practice it for 5 years, clearly after 5 years, you have lost a lot of your skills. At the same time, Swiss companies miss out on the opportunity to employ the people who are available here who might have the skills they have. And economically underemployed or unemployed migrants also have less income to spend in the economy and pay less taxes due to the loss of income resulting from professional mismatch. So it's not even a question of right, but economically it doesn't make a lot of sense. In social terms, of course, it has very serious consequences. Who suffer from unemployment and underemployment experience chronic stress and depression. And Bettina Hirsig, one of my PhD students, did a thesis on this and concluded that women who are wife as spouses are most affected because not only they experience brain waste, but discrimination and the frustration of not being able to use the skills are psychologically very impactful. And also, it seems to me a paradox that the funds that Switzerland has invested in promoting gender equalities for the past 20 years, especially in higher education for women, are wasted. Women cannot make the most of their educational resources. And also Swiss women. And the paradoxical thing is, in 2019, more women graduated from Swiss universities than ever. So women are getting more and more skilled. But the question of to what extent they can actually use those skills in the labor market is a huge gender problem. So let me move now to integration policies, my analysis of integration policies. And first, I just do a little orientation. You might know, but just to remind you, Switzerland has a tiered immigration system, mobility system, that divides European Union citizens and non-European Union citizens. And clearly, European Union citizens are covered by the free movement of persons agreement that Switzerland concluded with the European Union. And this gives them a lot of rights. So, for example, foreign law in Switzerland does not apply to the European Union. Non-Europeans are the foreigners. People from the European Unions can stay for up to 3 months to look for a job. You don't need a visa or anything. You can just walk into Switzerland and work also for 3 months without any paperwork. You have a preferential status over third country nationals for employment. And this is a crucial point because employers don't need to do a humongous amount of paperwork they need to do for non-European nationals if they want to employ a skilled worker. So if you have a German, an Italian, a Spanish one, you will have preference according to the law over somebody from Colombia, Pakistan, whatever. And also, and most importantly, they need a shorter number of permanent residence permit. This is so important because employers in Switzerland always want to see a C permit, which is a permanent residence permit. And it takes you 10 years if you are from a European country. It takes you 5 if you are from the European Union. So 10 years without that, I mean, you lose your skills. So it's the opposite in the case of non-EU. Foreign law does apply to them. You cannot enter Switzerland without a work and residence permit. only highly skilled. All the women who work in the care sector are seen as non-skilled, and they have no chance to get a permit whatsoever, despite the huge amount of work they do for the economy, and they need longer numbers of residence permits. So this is already very important to understand, to see that we're not all equal before the law, and when it comes to integration in the labor market, this makes a huge difference. So now let me look at the question if preventing brain waste is an objective of Switzerland's integration policies. And I have this quote from the Integration Agenda, yes, and it says to integrate refugees and temporarily admitted persons more quickly into the labor market and society to reduce the dependency on social assistance, the Swiss federal government and the cantons agreed in 2019 on a joint integration agenda that defines binding impact targets and processes. So this is textual. This is taken from the agenda. So what do we conclude from this, and also from my interviews and my analysis? Refugees are the main target group of Swiss integration policies. As a matter of fact, 90% of the financial resources go for refugees, which is fair enough. But at the same time, migrants from third countries who immigrate for professional or family reasons, including marriage, are primarily considered responsible for their own integration. So they are not seen as responsibility of the state. That's the private sphere, that's responsibility of the family. And there are some funds, but that's sort of the leftover from the other. That's a very important conclusion. All that potential is not considered to be needed to be promoted. Also, the promotion of highly skilled migrants, whether refugees or family migrants, has been for a long time not a priority of integration policies. And I started with my studies on highly skilled migration in 2004. And I remember people saying to me, but you're working with a privilege, why do you bother? They don't need any integration, they don't need anything. And here we are for a long time, they didn't receive a lot of support, because the spirit of this labor integration policy has been sort of pushed by the fear that migrants become dependent on the state. So they've been pushed to take any kind of job as soon as possible so that they do not become a financial burden on the state. It's a political thing. It's this idea of fear. It's not an economic conscience that to prevent brain waste, to help the country's future, we need to maximize this potential, but this fear, which is all politics. And that doesn't lead to analyzing the brain waste. So for years, the initiative to support highly skilled migrants mainly came from NGOs, and I have worked with the capacity, Deco, Friera, Health, many of them led by migrant women who came here as family migrants and realized that something needed to be done. A huge amount of work has been done by these organizations. Now, the arrival of Ukrainian refugees changed a lot of things in Switzerland. It did have a political impact. The Swiss government, because of political pressure, decided that they needed to be integrated in the labor market, and because most of the Ukrainians are highly skilled, so the government made money available for this organization so that they help the government integrate the Ukrainians. At the same time, the Swiss government has put in place a higher education for refugees pilot program, which was on the initiative of Swiss University, 2025 to 2028, which aims to improve higher education access for recognized refugees through funding for projects at Swiss universities in Basel, Yvonne, and Lucerne so far. This is very interesting, of course. However, in practice, at the level of implementation, I see that this fear of refugees and migrants becoming a burden on the Swiss state is one of the mainstream leitmotif that orients the practice of integration, thus pushing migrants to take any kind of job regardless of their qualifications. Also, the financial and geographical reach of these NGOs projects is highly insufficient. They are mostly in the largest Swiss cities, but in the smaller Swiss citizens and in Ticino, there is very, very little, and they have financial limitations. Of course, they can just scale up and expand. So, not really conducive to preventing brain waste. How to prevent brain waste and skills shortage. And I come towards the end of my presentation. I think the first and most important thing at the level of state policies is we need a paradigm shift. A narrative that sees migrants as a potential rather than as a burden or a threat. This hasn't come down yet to the political discourse in Switzerland. And this is what I hope will lead to promoting skills rather than skills waste. To stop prioritizing skilled migrants accepting any kind of work, to actually take measures to protect and promote these skills. First point. Second point, and this might seem an impossibility, but we need fair laws for non-European foreigners that will help their employment prospects. Yesterday, the gentleman from the State Secretariat for Migration said that not a lot of employers propose skilled people from non-European countries to take jobs because it's a nightmare. The paperwork is an absolute nightmare. It can take up to a year, and you have to prove that there is no German or Italian or whatever. The same happens to Ukrainians, by the way. And also the fact that they get a B permit, which is a one-year permit. Many employers think that a one-year permit means that after a year they will be kicked out of the country. So they rather not employ these people. A solution has to be found to this, a political solution, if Switzerland wants to, of course, continue its well-being. And then talking about potential among family migration, there is huge potential there. I mean, as I say, I started in 2004, and I still have hundreds of women who come to me and say, you know, I have all these qualifications, but I came as a spouse, I can't use them. So I think it's essential to take this really seriously, and I don't say that, the Swiss Federal Council also says it, essential to recognize and promote the skills. And last but not least, support for work-life balance. And people tell me this is not an issue of integration policies, but this is an issue in Switzerland that needs to be recognized by the state as a state job, the same as education, the same as health. So far, this task falls mainly on women. It is essential to recognize and to work with gender equality and other institutions to make sure that funding, affordable and geographically accessible external childcare services are available. And this is key to developing the professional skills of migrant and non-migrant women. I think this is a win-win approach to tackling skills shortage. And last but not least, I talked about the level of state policy, but I think also we need measures very specific measure. And I'd like to propose a multi-dimensional approach. Usually projects work either on individuals or employers, but very seldom on couples and families. And this dimension is so important because individuals don't come alone, they come with a family. And I mean, if one of the two has a job, what about the other? What's going to happen to the other? We need career planning for both. We need counseling for both. We need information. This is the individual level. We need gender arrangement, the whole issue of family planning. All this has to be part of career planning. And employers, of course, also very important to inform them, to let them know that a B permit is not necessarily an unstable permit, but it's actually a good permit to raise awareness about the potential and to build bridges. And for example, the potential to do a practical is still in Switzerland, the idea that because we have a dual system of education, vocational training, so you do the practical when you are doing your vocational training, but all these people who come from outside who could profit from showing their skills to employers, the practical would be a wonderful opportunity. So to conclude, I think if Switzerland wishes to maintain its competitiveness and retain skilled migrant workers, decisive to reorient integration policies towards preventing brain waste. And with this, I finish my presentation. Many thanks for your attention. And if you are interested in any of my publications, these two are fresh off the press.
So I give the floor to Bettina. Yeah,
Yes.
you definitely, yeah, thank you, doctor.
Excellent.
Just in between, can I ask the presenters of the the next session to send the presentations to me, please? I can put them all on in one spot. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much, Yvonne, for your presentation just right now. So I would have many things now to start a conversation directly with you. So we're really a project with exactly what you're mentioning. So I don't have to mention a few things now. That's perfect. But maybe first as a start, so PowerCode is actually, so I co-founded it together with my husband. And how did we started that? So I was born and raised in Switzerland. I studied in Switzerland. I started to work in Switzerland, and I wasn't aware of any barriers in the labor market. So everything was just accessible. So until 2016, so we also have a family, we have 2 kids, we moved and we hired a logistics service to support us with the move. And there was a guy also working there on an hourly base, and we started talking to him, and he was a refugee from Syria. And we asked him, okay, and that was the first time I talked to a person from Syria. Okay, and what did you do back in Syria? Yeah, I studied computer science and worked as an IT teacher. I was like, oh, wow, okay. So why do you work on an hourly base here and move things? So that's me. And also we were aware of the lack of talents in IT because my husband had an IT startup back then. So it was really like very naive. So why? And he explained me what the issue is, that he doesn't speak enough well the language. He doesn't have the degrees from Switzerland. He doesn't have the network, blah, blah, blah. I was really like, come on, that cannot be true. And so my husband and I were both entrepreneurs. We started several companies or projects. And entrepreneurs just love to solve problems. So there, the problem seemed to be quite obvious, but we had no clue about, so what is really the issue there? So we started digging into this topic, and it was half a year later that we started really this first project called Power Coders, the bootcamp, which lasts now 8 years. So that has never been the plan, to be very honest. It's really a bridge we still need to build because this gap still exists. We just heard it about the issue. And yeah, that's what I'm now presenting you, what we are still doing and what we started 8 years ago. So I don't think I have to go in depth here. So that's what you already heard. So we have this demographic change. That's clear. So we need all the potential we have. And this number, maybe that's a new one. That's a recent study published 2 weeks ago from the ICT Berufsbildung. So they estimate that there will be more than 50,000 people in the IT sector, which will just be not here. To be very honest, I'm pretty fair with this number. There's so much going on in the IT sector currently with the whole development of AI. Mm-hmm. So who knows what will happen really? I think it will be the case that we will need really digital talents. So we need AI literate people. We need them also here. I think near and offshoring is also a topic, but we need them also in Switzerland. So I think, yes, there will be still a lack of talents. The question is more with which skills. I'm currently doing a lot of research on that. No one really knows the answer, to be honest. But that's just to give you also context on this number. So we heard that as well. We have actually two things we can do. We can increase productivity, and I think AI, yes, is a solution to that, but then really use the skills we have here, and that's what we are focusing on. First, we really focused just on the refugees, but yeah, soon we thought, hey, why to make this division between refugees and migrants? In the end, both have the same issue. So we integrate refugees and migrants. So for us, it's let's say the same. It's a bit different than when it comes to permits and all that, but we treat them the same. So yes, you heard it from my story from this employee from the logistic service, but yes, that's what we always hear. That's also not new. What are the barriers? But I think especially for Switzerland, I'm not sure about other countries, but the so-called vitamin B, the point number one, the lack of network, that's so crucial. So if you don't know the people, if you don't have a reference from a Swiss person in your CV, that's an issue. You don't get a job without that, I would say. So yes, it's not a lack of talent, it's really the lack of access. And yes, that's what we created as a solution, give access. So we started with a bootcamp, a 3-month bootcamp, followed with an internship to place the people in a long-term position, that they are then off of social welfare and are independent again. So how are we doing that? So the first thing we're doing is we recruit talents. So talents, what means a talent? So I think the most crucial point is someone who is really motivated to start a career in IT. So it's not necessarily that they all have to be studied computer scientists or whatever. It can be a related field, like somewhere in engineering, whatever, and that they are already self-educated themselves in IT, because that's possible. So motivation is really important, and language. So we are doing our bootcamp in English. So English is just, you have to have a certain level of English, because also the whole online education, I think everything is available in English. Of course, a local language is also very important when it comes then to the placement in internships and so on. But we focus more really on the English skills. And then the third thing we are really looking for is really the potential, like let's say the cognitive potential. So are they able to solve problems? Are they able to really learn, etc.? So that's for us very important. In a bootcamp, we have around 30 people. We are running 2 bootcamps per year. We could do more. There are more talents in Switzerland. I think the bottleneck is more the companies who are offering the internships. And we don't want to have just educated more people in the bootcamp and then not be able to place them. So for us, it's super important that then we can really place them in internships. That's why this number is not higher still. So what are we doing in the bootcamp? It's funny, like also our learning curve is quite steep. So in the beginning, we just educated technical skills. And then the people started their internship. Yeah, a lot of them failed because they weren't aware of the Swiss culture. How do we work? How is it to work in Switzerland? So nowadays, our curriculum, I would say, is almost 50-50. Of 50% is really technical skills. There we focus that they really know how to learn. It sounds easy, but it is actually not. And the second part is really the social business skills. So interview preparation, CV, agile mindset, blah. So really things which are crucial nowadays. And the most important day, you see also here a picture, is the career day. So it's a speed dating. So each company, you see it here, has a table. Each company is offering an internship and is meeting our participants in a 5-minute interview. So it's really tough for our participants. So they have 15 interviews in one day. And for them, it's like crazy because they were never invited to an interview before. And suddenly in one day they have, whoa, but it's quite stressful, to be honest. But I think it's much better than just sending the CVs because it's not telling the story. So we give them there the opportunity to really present themselves. During COVID, we weren't able to conduct it. And we did kind of an online thing, but hey, to be very honest, we really see it's so valuable to bring the people together. You can never replace that part. And after that, we match the participants with the internship opportunities, and then they start their internship. Normally that lasts 12 months, that would be ideal, can also be 6 months, it depends a bit. And we are still supporting there the participants with job coaching. That's very, very crucial because that's not our end goal. Our end goal is that they get a junior position afterwards, a full-time position. That's not every time the case that this is possible. They can come back to our bootcamp and they get the chance for a second career day if it hasn't been successful with the first internship. So we prepare them that normally it's not linear, right? Success is not linear. Sometimes you have to go a bit like that and until you really reach your goal. So this is to summarize really these 4 steps of our model. So it's really this recruitment phase, which is super crucial because once we recruit someone, we support them throughout the whole journey. That's why this is 1 month. So we put quite some effort in that. The training, the 3.5 months, the internship, and then the integration. And you see also the difference. So it's not just us, we are just the bridge builder, let's say, but it's really the company who is on eye level with us. So we really say we just bring them talents, but it's in the end, it's on the companies to really make this happen, this part. And maybe to come back to a point you mentioned, I totally agree. Ideally, we use the skills and bring them in a position where they can nourish and bring value to a company. But we also have a bit the issue of, we normally say to our people, just take the job, start there. You can grow your career from the starting point from a junior position. It can be that we even have, computer scientists, as I said, but they start again on a really low level in IT, but from there they can grow their career. But if they would try to get in a senior position, no chance. And I think I totally agree. Ideally, it would be like that, but the entry point is always lower than the skills. And for some people, that's hard to
swallow.
Yes, exactly. And I honestly, I never had that, right? I really understand that it's a hard, but we really try to prepare them. Hey, really go this step by step. As I said, the career is like that. You just get your reputation, get a foot into the labor market and take it on. And even the internship, I mean, it's an internship, right? I mean, these are really highly qualified people. They start with an internship. So, but it's needed this time until you can then really be on a level from our perspective. To our impact numbers. So yeah, so far we trained around 380 talents. And these numbers are super crucial for us. So we steer everything around that. And we want to push that to higher and higher. So internship placement rates on 90% of all the participants who graduated from the bootcamp, we can place in an internship. And that's already good for them that they have really a reference from an internship in Switzerland. And 70% of all the graduates we can really place in long-term positions, that they are off of social welfare and are independent again. So these numbers are, I think, pretty high, but that's also due because, yeah, we select, so we get around 300 applications per bootcamp, and we select 30. So we really are super strict in our selection, and I think you see the results here. It would be a bit different if we would focus more on quantity. Let's say here on straight, I think we would have a decrease here. Maybe that would also be possible because they would still learn a lot, right? So we argued a lot on how should we balance it out. But right now we are still on very, very qualitative. We have rather less talent. Yeah, so I would have many stories I could tell, but I love to tell sometimes a story from a participant from the very first bootcamp, because there we were, if I compare the very first bootcamp to nowadays, we were super naive on how we did it. But still, there was Jamila. Jamila was an IT teacher in Kabul, Afghanistan, and fled the country. And yeah, she arrived here with her daughter, 2 years old. She had this issue of childcare and everything, but somehow she managed to take part in our bootcamp full time. And then she had an internship at Swisscom, and now she still works as a DevOps engineer at Swisscom. So I think it shows also, it's really also on long-term perspective, it works out. It's not just the internship or then maybe a one-year contract. So for her, she really, established herself in a company. Same here, it's also Gachendran from Sri Lanka. He's also a participant from the first bootcamp. He's now working at Migros. He used to work Migros Aare, now he's in Migros headquarters. So he changed internally, but he also is doing his career. It's interesting for us as well. So we have the first people who are now really looking for a new position in the job market themselves. And it's interesting to see. So if you then have a reference from, let's say, a Swisscom, a Mobiliar, or whoever, are you then able to find a job yourself? And we see now first results that they are really able to also move to another company. And I think that's very important and also good to hear in the end. It would be a shame, yeah. Yeah, that's about it. What we are doing, maybe to add as well. So we started, this is really the bootcamp. That's for the adults we are bringing into the labor market. When we were doing that, we learned also the same issue are facing also young people who want to go, for example, in an apprenticeship in IT. So we created Future Coders. That's also a project. We're doing more or less the same thing, a bit different, of course, because it's young people, but we're providing them digital courses for free and are also bridging to companies, for example, Swisscom, UBS, that they can get potentially an apprenticeship in the IT field. We are doing also women programs since 2 years now, because we learned exactly from doing, we learned what you presented, that especially migrant women have issues in really entering the job market, and especially also in the digital field. There are many migrant women with digital skills. So I don't know if you're aware of that, but in Switzerland, the share of women in IT is 18%. It's one of the lowest female shares in IT industry worldwide. And there are many countries worldwide which have a complete different ratio on that. And I think it's even a huge potential with migrant women to bring them in digital positions. So we created this program, it's called Women Connect, to exactly do that, to bring them in digital positions. Yes, that's about it. Here's my contact. So if you have any additional questions or inputs or whatever, just reach out to me. I'm very happy to get in contact with you. Yes.
Thank you. So I open the floor if you have a question. Yeah, okay. I collect people and then okay.
I'm delighted to hear what you're doing, Bettina. It reminds me of Refugee Talent Hub, which was also discussed by Elizabeth yesterday. They do this on a large scale because they have annual events where they bring companies together and they get them to sign pledges to recruit migrant workers. And the companies themselves are very much involved together with NGOs in mentoring, coaching, speed dating, all the activities that you mentioned. The numbers are still small. If you look at individual companies, there may be 8. For instance, I know in the Netherlands, they had ABN AMRO and Rabobank and so forth, and they also run their own boot camps. So do you have similar kind of ambitions to do what Refugee Talent is doing, or do you work with Refugee Talent Hub?
Yeah, so ambition wise, we heard it. We are also in Milan. So for I think 5 years ago, we started Power Coders International. That the idea behind that was a social franchising model. And we did a program in Tunisia, we did one in Turkey, we did then in Milan and Madrid. And Milan and Madrid are still active. In but we didn't end up to really make it a success, to be very honest. So we stopped this activity of Power Coders International, but our framework is still available. So we share it quite openly and support also other teams who want to get started with Power Coders. You can also use the brand and so on. So that's why we have the Power Coders Milano team who is active again. So I think that's one part we learned. It's super, the circumstances are really different from Switzerland to other countries. I think that has been part, and the funding is really a crucial thing. So what we tried is to create a fund to kick off the programs in other cities. And we weren't able to really achieve that part. So that has been the main thing. But what we founded out of this Power Coders International is Remo Coders. That's also a very interesting project. So it's based in Cairo, Egypt. It's in collaboration with SDC. What we are doing there is basically the same thing as Power Coders. It's just remote work. So we are having a boot camp in Cairo where we have senior engineers, senior IT people combined with vulnerable talents, means women or refugees. And they start in an internship and then junior position and so on. And companies from Switzerland so we call it nearshoring for good. It's not just nearshoring that you just try to get cheap labor. It's also you do something good in the country. Sure, that's Remo Code. We found it out of the idea of internationalize the idea.
Thank you so much for your transparency.
I don't know who were. I think maybe Jessica. I collect all the quite a lot. Jessica. I know.
Thank you to both presenters. Really inspiring and interesting presentations. Yvonne, I had a question for you around the indicators you're using to show skills waste, the ones where you were using, I think, the national level data on employment and unemployment rate. And I was wondering if it really tells you whether there is skills waste, because it shows you whether they're working or not, but it doesn't tell you whether they're using their skills and what kind of jobs they're doing. So I think exactly the title of your presentations, they could be working as cleaners, but trained as an economist. So that data just wasn't as convincing to me. And I was also wondering if there were cultural norms behind the lower employment rates for the different migrant groups. Bettina, I had a question for you around the internships, and I was wondering if they're paid, and basically, yeah, just wondering how refugees are supporting themselves during the boot camp and then while they're doing their internships. And I also just wanted to flag another organization called Talent Beyond Boundaries. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're also doing something a little bit similar, and they're basically also training up and then connecting refugees, mostly in refugee camps, and then bringing them on, connecting them with jobs in different countries. So I just thought it might be nice for you to make the connection.
Xenia?
I actually had the exact two questions.
So, Dina. Thank you. Dina?
I'm very interested in actually both topics, and I'll start with Yvonne first. And I will highlight that we have in Egypt, we have a similar situation, but when it comes to refugees. So refugees are facing integration issues in Egypt. They cannot legalize their state in terms of issuing work permits and working formally, and therefore they would accept jobs in a very, that are not really matching their skills. In the recent study that we were conducting, we were also seeing how they're just accepting informal jobs just because they don't have any other option. But what I really wanted to highlight is that what is worse in terms of brain waste, not just those who are still looking for jobs and can't find them, but those who are employed in jobs that are not matching their skills. And among the recommendations that we were having, or what we were looking at, is having a pilot of what kind of skills are identified as shortages and what skills do refugees own, and if we're able to make this connection, which would actually take me to what Bettina was saying in terms of how to qualify them and train them in that aspect. So I really like how you phrased it and how you put it in terms of brain waste and how we need to look at it. But for me, I'm seeing more of an issue among the employed ones in skills that are not matching, or in jobs that are not matching the skills. So going to Bettina, I also have, I don't know, lots of ideas came to my mind, and I was actually looking at Karim, my Egyptian fellow here. We never heard of remote coders, and I would love to speak about it with you once we're done. Among the things that came to my mind is on the impact side. So for the impact, you highlighted that 70% were integrated. Do you actually follow up with them maybe 1 year later and see what happened? Or also for the family? So I would be very interested to know, for example, two similar profiles. One of them were part of the boot camp, others were not, and try to follow up on what happened to the family. So was there a social impact, not just on the individual, but rather on the society? So were they able to send their kids to schools? Were they able to educate them? So is the final outcome or the impact at the end only with the person integrating in the job, or is there a spillover to the family and therefore a potential to scale up? And of course, the funding. I kept taking notes, and I keep highlighting funding. Who's funding and who's willing to contribute funds to such projects? Because I mean, putting the two together, I can think of how to convince employers to actually not just take on workers, but to do this assessment of understanding what skills they could be coming with, so we can have this proper matching in the labor market. But then on the other side, if we are going to help them by providing this intensive training on the technical side, but also on the soft skills side, and the issues are usually with the attitudes and with the soft skills more than the technical skills, how can we make them speak to each other and then have a bigger outcome at the end? So, thank you.
Hey, maybe Pascal, yeah?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap between the online questions and the questions that have been raised here. Perhaps just an add-on, you could say a little bit more about the characteristics of the employers participating in this initiative, and what are the characteristics of them, and how do you see a trend also in the collaboration with employers in terms of, you know, sustainable relationships, etc. The other question here, I think very much is in line with, the issue of who's supporting this, how do you promote this initiative, partnerships with authorities, etc. So I think that has been partially addressed. Thank you.
Quick question. Thanks both to Yvonne and Bettina. Excellent presentations, really insightful and really useful. Bettina, in terms of the model itself, could you tell us a bit more about the financing mechanism? How does this work in terms of how to get started, what role the employers have, whether there are other contributions? And also in similar vein, in terms of the engagement, how did you get the ball rolling in terms of getting more businesses involved? What was the critical lessons learned in terms of the employer engagement part? Thank you.
We can.
Shall I answer? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Financial model. Yeah. That's thanks for that question. So we started, or we kicked it off with a fund from Raiffeisen Bank and Migros. So very locally, just like innovation startup fund, let's say. And that financed the first program. So as I said, it was never the intention to run it on a long term. This first program, we had 15 refugees recruited, and we were able to place them all in internships. So we were running it in Bern, and we are quite well networked in Bern. So of course, we took advantage of that. And that's why we had really fast success. That was also when 2016, I mean, in media, it was all over this Mediterranean crisis and so on. So everyone felt like, hey, I should contribute. So really, it was a wave kind of, we jumped on. And then we got funding from a foundation to run it in Zurich. And then then Lausanne. So we had the idea initially to go from city to city until in Lausanne, there was a participant from Chur, which is really far away for Swiss base. And then we thought like, okay, but if the people are traveling that far, we don't have to run it in a city. We can just say Romandy and German speaking part. So we had a hub in Lausanne and one in Zurich, and then now we are nationwide, one book. That was the whole learning journey there. But then after this foundation, SEM started to fund power coders over 3 years with 500,000. That was the first point where we changed out also our organization. So before we were really a project, and then we were a steady organization with really employed people to run the programs. And then the goal for us was clear. So I studied economics. It was clear I don't want to fundraise year after year. So there is this Integrationsagenda in Switzerland, and the cantons have Pauschale. What's that? An amount of to support the refugees into the job market. And so we knew about this amount, and then we just send invoices to the cantons. So if this participant wants to take part, it costs 7,000 actually. They just started to pay. So we thought, okay, that works pretty well. And then we also said to the companies, hey, if you want to offer an internship, you pay a donation, because we are an NGO, so it's a donation of 12,000. And this 12,000 is that we recruit them, we prepare them, and we support them during the internship, and we just do the whole service around it. And we had no clue if that works out, but it worked out. And that's how we are funded right now. So it's really, and I think what I like about this financial model is we are solving actually an economical issue, but also a social issue. So, and it's funded half-half. So that's what I really like about it as well. And with some companies, it's really funny that money is an issue, but I think the bigger issue is the internship. So some companies will pay rather 20,000 and not take an intern. I'm very honest about that, but it's quite strange. But the issue is really often not the money with companies. So that's about the financial model, and then the companies. So we now have a network of over 150 companies. So I think we're really That's one of our main things we are still doing, is really getting in contact with companies. And how did we create this huge network? I think it's reputation. So it's Chris and I, we have a reputation somehow in IT that helped. Then I think the starting point that we were successful, that helped too. And I think the quality with the numbers I showed, it's so important that we keep that on a high level, because once this is dropping, the companies will not believe in this case anymore. So that's, you have a really high standard of quality is really, really crucial. And this focus on IT, that has been crucial as well. I think if we would have provided for all industries, we would never been able to have such a reputation for one specific field. I think all these circumstances, and then of course the lack of talents in this sector. I think, yes, of course. Otherwise it wouldn't have been possible. Yeah. But it costs a lot of effort, really a lot of effort, still with networking and all that. Still with this track record, it's not easy.
A labor of love.
It was just a clarification question. So how much money do the interns get?
Yes, the interns. So I would say in a standard case, a refugee who is still on social welfare, we pay the salary, not we, the company pays of a first year apprentices. So it's 600 francs, but this money goes anyhow to social service, so they don't receive that part. Because we argue it's better to keep them in social welfare during the internship, and as soon as they are really in a permanent position, the goal is then to get out of social welfare. But the risk of getting out already in the internship, because you don't get in this Sozialhilfe anymore after you get out. So the risk would be too huge. So rather stay in there, and this model works quite well. Yes.
No, sure. Thanks a lot for pointing that out, Jessica. Yeah, the issue of measuring brain waste. Clearly, unemployment gives you an indication. If you are not working, you're not using your skills. In an earlier version of the table, I also had the salaries as well as employment and unemployment. And if you see the salaries, you'll see that they're skill positions. There is a difference. I mean, women earn a lot more than women, but you see that the skills position. The idea was to sort of have several entries, indications together. And that's why also the table adequacy of work. So the idea is to get all those indicators together that seem to point in the same direction. So that's regarding to that. And Dina, thanks a lot for the question. Yes, that's one of the main issues, how to get people who are already in working as cleaners when they have a skill qualification. And there are two things. On the one hand, I do think that having projects like Bettina's and like all the kinds of things is fantastic. But the state also has to take a responsibility with the policies. I mean, these are all initiatives from the public, same as Capacity, same as Découvrir, same as HEX. They're all NGOs. They're doing fantastic work. They have different approaches. For example, Capacity in Zurich and Frieda and Découvrir, their approach is mentoring. So they get a person who's in the same, so I take a geographer, for example, I'm a geographer, and I use my network to help that person get a practicum or a job. Is also has been very successful. All of them have contacts with employees, and this is great, and it has had a terrible and incredible impact, but the numbers at the end are modest, as long as it's not part of a state policy. And I say this because it's not even a state policy that we're not just talking about human rights. We're talking about a neoliberal discourse that if Switzerland wants to keep being competitive in the future, like other countries, like highly industrialized countries like Canada, Australia, have recognized this a long time ago. you need to maximize those skills. And this message hasn't really come down here. And I think it really has come down to politics is the main thing. Because we keep the same narrative we had in the 1930s with the referendum, which was we don't want to have too many foreigners, diluting Swiss identity. And I mean, it's 2025. Come on, you know, it's another time. So it's like this level, fantastic initiatives, and all the NGOs, but then the state and politics level, we have a different things. We have to work at all levels. Sort of keep trying convincing politicians who are not so willing to see the positive parts of it. And that's a bit of my mission, trying to show things also in a way that right-wing parties can see it as an economic benefit and not only as something that see as a threat. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. I think, I'm sorry, but I think we can continue also during the break. And I would like to really thank you, both of you, because it's been really wonderful presentation. Really, thank you a lot. So, okay,
Wonderful work.